$2 or $3. Don't do that. Two or three at a time. We want all of the money. But good afternoon. This is Community Connections, Community Talk for community people, the fastest and most friendly weekly 1 hour talk show in the Great Lakes Bay Saginaw region. I'm glad you tuned in this June 6th for another sharing of community talk and information. I am Joyce Harvin, a little hurried, little rapid here. Today's Community Connection show is brought to you by the Saginaw branch of the NAACP and its Youth Council. We urge you to get connected, be informed, and stay involved. As I mentioned, I do have Carly Hammond here. We're going to be continue our talk about the ARPA funds that have landed here in Saginaw. And I want to give a date. Do we have a new date, Carly? For a meeting?
I'm waiting to hear from Michelle McGregor at First Board. We'll see if she comes in today. But I know they're working on multiple meetings, particularly because in the survey responses, we already had 19 people say that they wanted to host their own meeting.
Oh, really?
So,
good.
Yes, I'm hoping to get something this upcoming weekend. I know that a lot of community members are busy this weekend. It's graduation.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So there's a lot of people coming in and out of town. But we will get that date out to community. If you are not, this is a good opportunity and a good reason to go look at First Ward's Facebook page.
Yes.
If you do not like their Facebook page, it's a great center for information for one of the greatest organizations in our community. So go and like that page. That has some great information regardless, but we will have all of our updates posted there.
Okay, very good. Now, Carly, I'd like you to give us just a brief summary of the ARPA funds and what ARPA means.
So ARPA is the American Rescue Plan Act, and the Biden administration passed this act on March 11th of this year. If you got those $1,400 stimulus check payments, that was in the American Rescue Plan Act. It had funding for business relief, home and rental assistance, education, all these different buckets. And one of those buckets of funding was direct relief funds to state, local, and tribal governments. Mm-hmm. And they based that off of the community development block grant model. So depending on population and need, how they distributed those funds. And if you were what's called an entitlement city, you get those funds directly to you. It doesn't go through the state of Michigan first, which is kind of unique. And Saginaw is an entitlement city. So it doesn't have to wait for the state to appropriate those funds. We're getting, we know, $52 million. There is no barrier, no government barrier between the city of Saginaw and that money. It is coming. It is there, essentially.
At first, it was $54 million. Mm-hmm. What happened to that $2 million?
So it was 54 estimated based off of early, because like I said, it's a community development block grant model, which is they basically carried over a formula from that and had some initial guesses made by news groups and things like that. But the numbers coming down from the Treasury Department were official, and that's where the 52 changed from the 54. Okay. That might be due to some population changes, or just bad math done by some of the news outlets, but I don't blame them. It was pretty close.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yes.
So we've had one meeting. There are 19 more not individuals, but groups that want to have their own separate meetings for their communities. Is that anyways connected to the community neighborhood groups?
Not yet. I know we have had people from some of the neighborhood groups at our first meeting and in communication with, so they might be. I think that's actually a great idea to have them sponsored by the different neighborhood associations.
That would be great.
That'd be phenomenal. Like make them like little block parties or have some like hot dogs or something.
Right.
And then, as people come in and get their food, ask them what they would like to spend $52 million on. That's a phenomenal idea.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that we were hoping people would take on is sort of like play with the format, because there's not a lot of information except it's $52 million. What would you do with it, Saginaw?
Right.
And here's like just a few restrictions, but most of that is a restriction on the city more than it is on the population. Like you can't use it to pay down debt, and you can't use it to cover utility funds, holes in your budget, things like that. You can't use it to pay down pensions. So that's all like cities, what administrators have to worry about. In terms of people, the conversation is just so adaptable because it's really open-ended to what that community believes is going to improve their economic condition, their health condition, the quality of life in your community.
Mhm.
Because what the Treasury guidance or what ARPA says is that it's a recognition that COVID was unequally harsh for certain communities because of pre-existing conditions that make it hard to have a good quality of life, to have and they tied that all in with health and wellness. So when they say COVID relief funds, what they mean is if your community has been disproportionately impacted by COVID, like Saginaw, which we're an entitlement city, so we're already there, then you can spend these funds to improve your community the way you want to.
Will those funds be used for like the health department? Now that's a county.
Yes.
Or I know the county got their own money.
Yes.
Okay. So we don't necessarily have to spend any of the 52 million dealing with the pandemic with the health department.
It's not required.
Mhm.
There's no requirements for how much money you have to spend on this or this or this. It's very open-ended. But yes, Saginaw County has received, or is receiving rather, around $37 million, and each municipality is getting their own funds. So I know this is a great time to mention this. Bridgeport Township is getting just under $1 million. Buena Vista Township around $800,000. Carlton Township $550,000. Kochville Township $460,000, I should say. And Saginaw Charter Township is getting under $4 million, around there. So those aren't my confirmed estimates because it's taking them a little bit longer to get to the smaller areas and figuring out exactly what they will be receiving. But it's significant amounts of money for all of these townships. Maybe not as transformative as $52 million like the city of Saginaw, but still significant to do projects that community members should participate in and let their local representatives know about.
Have any of the surrounding townships and counties looked at their amount and looked at our amount and say why?
Well, I am sure that some would. I am sure that that's a conversation to be had. However, with the Treasury guidance, it also says we are looking specifically to spend this fund on people who have been impacted the most by COVID, who have been, really, really down and out either before that and then exasperated during COVID. They've really emphasized getting this money to where it needs to go and who needs it most, and getting that relief done first and helping people who need it. Yes.
Okay.
So a lot of those regional funds at the county level, it would be very hard for them to, for instance, give money to a certain area because they say they need it more than this area, unless they can prove that there were some disproportionate COVID effects because of things like lingering economic disparities, things like that.
Okay. So have you heard from the city yet? They have another city council meeting coming up on Monday. Have you heard from the council members who may be interested in joining, coming to check out our meetings?
I've had a conversation with a couple council members since then, and they're interested in hearing what people have to say in terms of coming to meetings. They don't want to lay down a commitment and then jump back on the commitment. So what I'll say is I hope to come to the next meeting because I think our community forums are only going to get bigger. And I can't also blame them for it because we don't have a date set yet. I'm hoping we can do one this next weekend, either Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. But there are a lot of things going on. I don't know if you heard, but the city's planning water shutoffs on 750 households that the council was just made aware of at the last council meeting. So I'm definitely aware that we have lots of ongoing projects and lots of ongoing issues. And if you'd like, I can talk a little bit about that because I know I have that. I have some expertise in water affordability and municipal water supplies coming from Flint. And I'm also in contact with a couple of organizations that are looking to get involved in Saginaw to try to intervene before those water shutoffs happen.
Okay. And there's something in here about replacing water.
There is.
Lead pipes.
Yes. And so for when the document, when ARPA was originally passed, there were just a few things that it laid out that you could spend it on, and a few things laid out that you couldn't spend it on. But the overall spirit of the law was to, say, we want to spend this on COVID recovery. And then the Treasury guidance came out, which is basically all the really, really important details, 151 pages. I believe that is what is sitting on your desk.
Yes, it is.
Joyce, it is a hefty stack of paper.
It is.
And with lots of highlights in it. So I'm glad you had a chance to review it. But that Treasury guidance broadened a lot of those uses and said, this is what COVID recovery means. Increasing the wellness of your community, increasing the quality of life in your community.
But you have to tie it directly back to the pandemic.
Not necessarily, because they recognize that COVID disproportionately impacted communities that had pre-existing disparities. So if what you want to do with your community is somehow addressing those pre-existing disparities and your community can justify it, you can spend the money on it. And by justify, I mean there's annual reports where the city has to do a write-up and say, like a summary report, and say this is how we're justifying this, essentially. So that's how they do that. Detroit, for instance, did a over 100 slide presentation, and they're doing that at all their community meetings. They're doing 25 meetings in 25 days.
That's good.
It's very ambitious, and it's also very smart. It's very smart because the city can sort of huddle together very quickly and get their agenda out there first before they get any political opposition groups creating more demands for them that they then have to meet. So it's clever. It's a clever way to do it, but they have also taken in a lot of ideas from community organizations before this. They have budgets for community gardens. They have $100 million specifically for community, how do they call it? Like neighborhood block by block engagement for neighborhood signs. So then when you enter a specific neighborhood, you know what neighborhood you're in, and parks and ways to create those little neighborhood units to create, and how do I say not create, but bring back that sense of community that sense of solidarity with the people who are living on your block, and ways for you to, work, eat, live, love, and pray together within your little neighborhood community. Because too often, we have things like food deserts, we have things like highways that cut through neighborhoods that have divided communities and have cut through that sense of solidarity and camaraderie that is so valued when you move into a neighborhood. So they are looking at revitalizing those sorts of things. So if that tells you anything about what Detroit is to really taking advantage of in terms of what ARPA is saying and what the Treasury guidance is saying you can spend this money on, Detroit's really taking that by the horns and saying, we are going to transform our communities. We are going to do it, brick by brick by brick and community by community, and not leave anybody behind.
So the interim rule is Detroit and Flint, they get the same draft. They have the same draft.
Yes, the interim rule, it's called the final interim rule, which is a bit of a juxtaposition that you have there, and that's the Treasury guidance. I refer to it as the Treasury guidance rather than the interim final rule because the Treasury guidance is expected to stay almost exactly this. They don't have to change anything. And if you read along the 151 pages, you'll see areas where they have questions, where the Department of Treasury said, hey, what do you think about this, communities? This is something we're not sure of, so this is what we're considering changing. There's some minor details about things like timelines, phrasing that would be more or less beneficial, whether or not you look at it. Hey, municipalities, should you be able to transfer funds to a neighboring municipality to work together on projects? So things like that. There's details in there that do mean a lot, that they're looking at changing or modifying, but the overall spirit of, this is addressing long-standing disparities in communities, that's going to stay the same. That's going to stay there. And wanting to hear from the community about, what they want is something that Detroit has already started, and something that we in Saginaw have already started as community organizations, and something we should definitely continue to do throughout the summer at the very least. But we're getting 26 million this year and 26 million next year. So this is going to be an ongoing conversation, and there are going to be things that evolve out of not just this, but more money coming down the line. And I'm sorry to take a tangent, but it's so important because these ARPA funds, again, they're not just standalone. It's not just the $52 million coming to Saginaw. Even when you consider all the municipalities getting their money in this bucket of funding, there are so many more buckets. The state government is getting its own branch of ARPA funds. And I know what they're looking at is they're considering specific projects. And I also know they're probably looking at certain communities to get ideas to think about for the future. What should we develop matching dollar for dollar programs for? Does that make sense? So if Saginaw comes out and says, we really want to do let's just say sort of like Detroit, a block by block neighborhood revitalization program where we say, okay, each of these areas is going to have one park. It's going to have, we're going to zone it for a community grocery store or something. Like there's really big ideas that can come out of this. So let's say we have that. And the state of Michigan says, you know what, I think that's a good idea. If any community comes up with this idea, we're going to match it dollar for dollar, your spending. So when I talk about getting ahead of the conversation and having people come up with their own plans and communities come up with their own plans ahead of time, it is not disconnected. It is not just us. It is a whole potential world of even greater investment in Saginaw that we could take advantage of. But we have to take advantage of the opportunity now to do the work in our communities, to come up with these plans and to have them, built out in a way where they can be spread throughout the state and they can be spread throughout the nation.
Could the Saginaw City Council or the city of Saginaw add more staff to their economic development department so that there would be a person who would look for smaller grocery stores? We do not have a grocery store in the city of Saginaw. Okay, we have the little smaller stores, but we don't have a major store. So is that something that can be done? Can they hire staff from these funds in order to ramp up their economic development?
Yes, they can. Okay. Yes, they can. And what I would even go further and even more directly, because a lot of the funds that are going to the state are going to come down into communities, like I said, matching dollar for dollar programs. But with a lot of this money coming in, a lot of money that's already there at the state, if you've been paying attention to state politics, a lot of it is what's called the competitive grant. So you as a community have to put in a huge, big old stack of paper and do tons of paperwork with lots of research and lots of numbers. And you have to, really dot your I's and cross your T's to compete. It's almost like, trying to get a scholarship nowadays. They have like 2 full ride scholarships for the entire school. So you're competing with 1,200 other students for a bucket of funding. And now our communities have to do that at the state level. So in Saginaw, we could hire people full-time specifically to look at grants at the state level and say, Saginaw, we really deserve this grant, and put ourselves at the top of the list, because we need a lot of these grants, especially ones for replacing lead pipes, doing things like relief for garbage abatement systems and programs, home piping. There's money at the state with competitive grants attached to it, where I believe the city can apply to the state to get money to then go into people's homes and repair their plumbing in their home. So all of these ideas, all of these projects that have funding at the state level, the city has to put in the actual application, and with ARPA funds, they can hire people to do that, which is how you grow from $52 million investment to $100 million investment.
I was looking through this. I saw something about well, it didn't actually say churches, but many of our churches have been working with their congregations and people in the community to provide them with information about COVID. Okay. Let me find this, because I said, let me call and ask about this. Hold on. It was for ramping up their HVAC system or cooling system within their facility. Hold on. I read through quite a bit of this. Hold on.
You've got so much highlighted.
Yeah, there's a lot. It is a lot. And I've gone through this a couple of times, and here it says, the recipient may consider public health and safety employees. Hold on. They were doing something with public health.
Joyce, do you want to take a 2-minute break?
Yeah. Let me take a break. I want to find this because I I wanted to make sure that I was correct on how a church that lets their congregation in and how that facility would work with any of these dollars if it was possible. Let's take a break. You're listening to Community Connections, Community Talk for Community People. I'll be right back.
You're listening to Community Connections with Joyce Harvin on KISS 107.1.
It's straight talk, straight with no chaser. It's straight talk with Kareem Bowen, getting right to the heart of the matter, giving you all of what's happening in Saginaw and the Great Lakes Bay region, all at a grassroots level. Sundays at 6 p.m. on KISS 107.1.
At Menards, save big money on your next project with 11% off everything. General Purpose Concrete Mix is great for sidewalks, steps, patios, and setting posts. Simply add water, mix, and pour. Starting today, all bags of concrete are 11% off. Get 11% off everything now at Menards. Good through June 12th. Savings are a mail-in rebate. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Save big money at Menards.
Jess's 30-minute bike boot camp? I guess it's that kind of day.
Are you ready for a total body workout, Peloton fam?
I am.
We'll start the class on the bike and then move to the floor. Let's get it.
With Peloton instructors right in your home.
Are you feeling it yet? Let's keep pushing for 5.
You have motivation that's ready when you are.
Clip off that bike and meet me on the mat for lunges.
I got this.
You showed up today, Peloton. Who's feeling sweaty and strong?
Definitely me.
Tap into your motivation at onepeloton.com.
I'm Dr. Baker, an ER physician. If you're having leg pain, swelling, or redness, but haven't talked to your doctor yet, don't wait. This could be deep vein thrombosis, a blood clot which could travel to your lungs and lead to a pulmonary embolism, which could cause chest pain or discomfort or difficulty breathing and be deadly. Your symptoms could mean something serious, so don't wait. Talk to a doctor right away, by phone, online, or in person.
Brought to you by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
This week's deal on RocketGrabPlus.com is for the first ever Midland County Cornhole Tournament, presented by Forgotten Man Ministries. The player registration fee is usually $100, but if you go to RocketGrabPlus.com right now, you get yours half off. And the winner of the tournament takes home $1,000. The tournament is taking place Saturday, June 26th at the Eagle Ridge Church of God in Midland. Head to RocketGrabPlus.com right now to snag your deal.
RocketGrabPlus.com.
And now back to Community Connections on KISS 107.1.
Yes, ma'am. You are listening to Community Connections, Community Talk for Community People. I am Joyce Harvin, and my guest today is Carly Rose Hammond. And we're still talking about these ARPA funds because we want to help the community spend $52 million.
$52 million.
Yes, to improve, to revitalize the communities where you are living. And this 151-page document is just so full of information and ideas of how you can spend the money. Mm-hmm. I was going through looking at how churches might be able, those who have large congregations and who are providing services, how they might be able to utilize these funds.
Yeah, so a lot of churches have what's called a 501c3 nonprofit status. Mm-hmm. It's separate from their church.
Right.
So a lot of the same people just establish a 501c3, and a lot of them have community projects through that. Mm-hmm. And 501c3s can receive direct funds from their local ARPA. So what that would mean is the city of Saginaw taking some of this money and giving it to 501c3s that operate in the city of Saginaw. Mm-hmm. I assume they would have to come up with some sort of application process.
Right.
And we also have a lot of C3s and a lot of prospective C3s I've heard a lot about in the community. Quite a few of them were actually at our most recent forum, mm-hmm. and they weren't sure, what to do. And all of those, it is confusing because all of those processes are going to be handled at every single different municipality. However our city council decides to have that process, that's what the process will be. So
the city of Saginaw will format their own applications.
I assume so.
The requirements together.
Yes. That is who will be, because they're the ones who are going to be deciding how this money is spent. So they're the ones who will be allocating it. Now they could give it to a fund like the Saginaw Community Foundation and just say, you figure out how to distribute it. They could do that with also economic development in Saginaw Future, where they grant a bunch of money to them and say, you figure out how to do with it. But what I personally have been hearing from a lot of residents is that they want transparency in these decisions. They want input in these decisions. They want to be able to say what community organizations they have trust in, what churches are out there on the ground and that they can speak for and say, you know, case by case, what the city, since the money is on our hands, that we can be very, very transparent and clear about who is getting what and why. So that's what I've heard, rather than, you know, giving those bulk to and allowing other organizations to distribute it, making sure that's all distributed from a central hub in Saginaw that every resident can have an impact on and can have their say in.
So there is a great possibility that the city of Saginaw will have more employees, that they can pay employees with this money to put these programs together and to get it going.
Absolutely. Okay. And I know there's also a lot of ideas in Detroit around wraparound services with a lot of their programs. For instance, they are trying to give they have a plan to give anybody who is in affordable housing designation, that they get free Wi-Fi for 3 years. Just a free Wi-Fi program. And then they also have a cash assistance program for those people. They are also setting up all of these different wraparound services and targeting areas with, like I said, community development and having that neighborhood by neighborhood plan. So that takes a lot of effort from a city to be able to provide that. That takes the creations of entire departments to be able to manage all of those things. And that is a possibility. That can happen. The city of Saginaw can create its own department. They can have a Department of Saginaw Wellness, let's just say that, where they can specifically, you know, help organize these programs and distribute these programs and work with other state and local and regional authorities to be able to provide wraparound services for Saginaw residents.
Rob, I don't know what county you live in, but have you heard anything with your municipality or any of your local leaders?
No, I live in Saginaw Township, so I haven't heard much about anything. All this is news to me, too.
Okay. But how much are they? Which township do you live in?
Saginaw Township.
Saginaw Charter Township, about $4 million.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. That's what I heard today. But earlier I had not heard that. Yeah. Okay. Some of the local newspapers that I pick up, I haven't read that yet.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's very low key.
It's really, it's really touch and go. It is very distinct. And what I'm hearing at the state level, and it's all a scramble for people who are experts at this sort of thing, because one, nothing like this has ever happened before with these direct payments. This is very novel. This is very new. It happened very quickly. And number two, everyone's focusing on the American Jobs Plan, which if you're a political person, you've probably heard that coming down the line.
Yeah.
Also the American Families Plan. So I'll introduce that very briefly because it does have to do with ARPA and what we're talking about. So the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, is the first installment of what's called the Build Back Better plan. Build Back Better, that was Joe Biden's whole thing. So this is part of his iteration on that, his promise to bring that to fruition, really like a great society, like a New Deal sort of a thing.
Right.
It's got all those flavors of lots of government spending in order to revitalize our infrastructure, revitalize American jobs, build back better, essentially, with our economy, schools, health, climate, and with all of the considerations to equity and pre-existing disparities. So I'm very excited about this first installment because they seem to care a lot about equity. They're using words that haven't been used before at a federal level, recognizing that these pre-existing economic, health, and wellness disparities contributed to the outcomes of the pandemic that hurt more communities more than others. And now, like I said, the American Rescue Plan Act is the first installation.
Right.
What we also have coming down the line is what's called the American Families Plan. It hasn't passed yet, but the administration is trying to pull for universal pre-K. Universal pre-K. And they're also trying to pull for universal first 2 years of in-state community college paid for. So universally, those are the things, and that's publicly available. That's not insider information. They've been doing press releases on this. That is the American Families Plan. Really big spending on education, expanding earned income tax credits, and trying to, get early on childhood education and perhaps after-school programs. I didn't see a lot about that, but they really want that full education court press, essentially, in the American Families Plan. And then the big one is the American Jobs Plan, the AJP. Again, also not passed. It's in the works. It is a $2 trillion spending plan. It is massive. And this is the big infrastructure one. So whenever somebody tells me that the American Rescue Plan Act, the one that's already passed, ARPA, that these $52 million funds should go for transportation or that they should go for infrastructure, you know, that it could be if your community really wants to do that and it needs it now, and you want some really targeted areas to hit first while the American Jobs Plan is still being decided. I understand that. That's completely reasonable. However, I have had some people describe it to me as ARPA is an infrastructure bill. That is not true. And I would go so far as to say that would be backwards. That would be a little bit wrong, because the American Jobs Plan, that's the big infrastructure thing coming down the line. And we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars going specifically towards one tranche is for communities that have been intersected by highways, neighborhoods that have been cut through by highways. Again, they're recognizing that inequity, and they're recognizing that disparity. So we know as Saginaw, if we're looking ahead, and also, you know, if we maybe use some ARPA funds to hire people in the city, that could then apply to those grants when they become available through the American Jobs Plan. If we're looking down the road, then we know we've got all this infrastructure money coming. How can we best set ourselves up with the American Rescue Plan Act to then, again, turn 52 million into 100 million into 500 million for Saginaw? Because that is a very, very real possibility.
As they say, we should be shovel ready. We know the money is coming. We need to get that out there.
Exactly.
Wow.
So the American Jobs Plan, and this is the one that the administration is really going for. So it's interesting because a lot of advocates have sort of skipped ARPA. I know that from a state level perspective, there are people who are paid by organizations to talk about the American Jobs Plan and to prepare communities for it. Because that's the really big Build Back Better thing. It's a huge political, it is a political move, of course, because it's going through Congress. It's Biden's Build Back Better plan. So this is the whole re-election thing, is revitalizing infrastructure. This is his promise to Americans. So they're investing in the political infrastructure to get the word out and to make sure communities know about it and are participating. However,
and that they are participating. That is the big word.
Absolutely.
Okay. We want everyone to participate and know where this money is coming from, how it's going to help you and the community that you live in.
And also who voted for it.
Who voted for
and
it.
who advocated for it in your community. And check that out. Because what I will tell you is that no Republicans voted for it, and even a few Democrats voted against the ARPA plans, and they passed it through the reconciliation process, the Senate thing, which is really weird.
Yes, it is.
And that's actually that's another part of the reason the American Rescue Plan Act isn't talked about a lot, because it happened quite quickly and confusingly, and even the Congress people themselves don't really know what happened. And there's usually a back and forth. That's why this bill was so blank when it came out. We expected a lot more addendums and a lot more restrictions, but the Treasury essentially, again, took that gray space and ran with it and said, use it to address inequality and inequity amongst your communities and within your communities.
Another example would be daycare. Now or not daycare, but pre-K should like Head Start wait until the next plan comes out, or should they try to improve their education unit and the kids in the pre-K and whatever they might need in the communities now, or wait?
Well, the American Families Plan Act is not act. It's not passed yet. It's just a plan. But the American Families Plan is looking at Head Start. However, what I think smart and forward-thinking municipalities should do, again, when you're looking at hiring new people, is to have people in those meetings where they're negotiating the American Families Plan. Have them at the webinars when they're happening, in the room where it happens, because it's getting negotiated right now, so that those can become expert advocates for the community of Saginaw, bring that information back, share that information back out, and make sure that we are developing our plan for spending the American Rescue Plan Act with every single micro development that's happening with American Families Plan and American Jobs Plan. That is the smart way to do it. I don't know how difficult the hiring process could take some time to get people in there, but that is my recommendation to anybody who would ask me if hey, Carly, what should we spend the American Rescue Plan Act on? Number one, I say that's up for the community to decide. That's why we're holding community listening sessions. However, what I will say is look at some of this money as an investment, a down payment towards your future. And literally, you could get a massive return on investment quickly by hiring people in the city whose job is solely to look out for more funds coming down the line, and how Saginaw can get ahead. Saginaw can get at the front of the line for a lot of these funds and say, here's where Saginaw has been, here's where we're at. It's been really difficult for us to get competitive grants in the past because we haven't had the resources to apply for them, which is very backwards. But you can take here's the money to do it now. Here's the money to get ahead. And we know we've got more money coming down the line for things like also water bills. So what we can do now is use a small portion of this money to get people in the city administration who are specifically tasked with looking for more funding and growing Saginaw's piggy bank, essentially, to increase the quality of life for our citizens.
I would really like to see the city get ahead of this. Don't get ahead of the neighborhood input, but to have things ready.
Yes.
Have things ready. And, begin hiring, begin, what it's going to take to put this together. You will not remember this, but there was a block grant, a large block grant, where they started a program called Saginaw Neighborhoods Incorporated. I don't know if you ever heard about that, but they hired so many people in the community, and they kind of taught people how to become engaged. They taught them how to, Saginaw Neighborhoods Incorporated, they taught the residents how to fight City Hall, how to go, not really fight them, but how to be engaged, attend the meetings. They did a wonderful job. This is some years ago, but there needs to be another Saginaw Neighborhoods Incorporated because they can do the work. Train them, get them out there. And when the money hits, that they have been in touch with all of the neighborhood people, okay? And so they can go right in and meet with City Hall and not let City Hall kind of run over, the communities and say, okay, this is our priority. Your priority has to be on the side.
Exactly.
I really don't want that to happen with this big sum of money because Saginaw needs a lot of revitalization. It needs a lot of rebuilding. There is money being left on the table, even with some of the funds that we have, for economic development. There are a lot of reasons, for that, but I want to see that the city, be it city council or the neighborhood state, we need to be ready, and have all of our plans, again, shovel ready, so to speak, not the physical digging in the dirt, but we need to be ready for what is coming, and I just think that we need to prepare. I don't know who I get that message across to, but that is what needs to be done. And I just hope that all of the listeners out there will call someone and let them know that Community Connections is on so that they can listen to the information that's coming your way or that is taking place right now here at Community Connections, so that you will know about what's coming down the pike. There's $52 million that can be spent. We need community input from everyone. There are people older than me who want to plan. I have some neighbors who want to be a part of the planning process and work with City Hall. So I'm just hoping that the city will not disrespect us, I guess, the community.
Well, have you, if you've ever watched football, American football, of course, the way that I think about it is what, you see executed in their game, lots of plays, lots of pre-planned formations and things like that. And what you're seeing is almost an art form because it's been practiced hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of times by these players. Hundreds of hours, thousands of hours, so many practice games. Their entire lives are built towards that moment of what you see executed in the game. And what I see happening is, the spending of these ARPA dollars is the game. You can't just go out there without the practice, the huddle, the team, the community beforehand. You have to do that work to get to that moment. And right now is the time where you're building your plays, you're getting with your community, you're hearing what they have to say, so that if more money comes down the line, if the American Jobs Plan gets passed, the American Families Plan gets passed, you're ready to go out there on that field and crush it. That you know that this person's got your back. You're going to go right, he's going to go left, he's going to go straight, and look for the throw, and you're going to get that touchdown because you've put in the work. We can't wait until Saginaw gets to the field to compete. We have to be ready to fight way in advance. Right. We have to be ready to go, because the truth is, with competitive grants, and I'll be the first person to say, money for communities should not be a game. Mm-hmm. It should not be a competition. Mm-hmm. But we cannot divest from the system that we currently have. We have to do this. So the sad part is that there are other communities who are the other team. We're fighting over these funds. We're going to get there. That's really unfortunate, but what's going to happen, especially with our Republican legislature, they want this to be competitive funds, mm-hmm. because they know that communities with more resources already have a leg up. Mm-hmm. The team who gets more money for coaches, who gets more money for training, is probably going to win that fight. Mm-hmm. But Saginaw, if we start ahead, we start early, we start training our team now, we get together with our community, we build really strong plans that are based out of data that we can look to and say, we know this many people talked about this many people talked about that, this is when we heard it, and this is what we're going to do. We can set ourselves up to win.
And this is the very reason that we want every one of you who are listening to be prepared, stay tuned. When you hear about a meeting, if you see any of the awareness signs out in the community about the meetings taking place, that you attend those meetings and give your input as to how that money should be spent, how you would like to have it spent in your community to improve your community. Okay, right where you are. We should not have to leave our community in order to go get a loaf of bread. So
very true.
Yeah. So I really want all of the meetings, the ones that we're doing in the community, as well as the ones that the city hopefully is planning, to be well attended, and that everyone can have a say so or have that input. Because this is where we live. You know, this is where we live, and we know what we need. We, when we complain about something not being available to us in the neighborhood, whether it's a grocery store or a food wagon or, a produce market, those are things that we need. We don't have, and we complain about it when we have to go so far in order to have those kind of resources in our community.
I live very close to Bridgeport Kroger. And to put it kindly, that place needs a facelift. Mm-hmm. But it's also not a place where I'm comfortable buying a lot of meats and fresh vegetables. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are very less than fresh. And I know that place is full all the time because the entire east side of Saginaw essentially has to shop there. The entire 48601 zip code has to shop there. That's where I shop. Mm-hmm. And it's disappointing to have to see people, pick up goods that aren't quality because that corporation knows people have to come. So they don't want to give them quality because they know they don't have a choice.
I think that we could attract several Aldis in the city, for grocery stores, although that's a smaller grocery store. But,
they pay their employees well. They treat their employees well. Yeah, a lot of them are, quality products. This isn't an ad. This is not an ad. But we're just dreaming, and this is what we want the community to do: is to dream about what our communities could be after $52 million.
Right. What it should look like, what it could look like. When you go visit other cities, what does it look like to you when it's convenient for you in your where you're visiting? So we need to do the same thing.
Yeah. What makes it feel like a home? Mm-hmm. What makes it feel like a place where you want to be? What makes it feel like a town? And what are the things that when I hear residents say, I got to get out of here, I got to leave Saginaw. It's a massive, huge sentiment. Probably the biggest sentiment I heard whenever I've knocked doors or talked to people in the community. I'm just saving up so I can get out. Mm-hmm. what are the decisions that we need to make? What are the things that need to change in order to reverse that and say, I want to come back.
I want
to stay.
I want to stay here. Right. I was talking to a young lady over the weekend, and she was saying, well, I just graduated from Saginaw Valley, and I'm vacillating on whether I'm going to stay here or whether I'm going to leave. I said, I understand. I want to do the same thing. I want to stay here, or either I want to leave. But I said, choose wisely. We need you here in this community. This is where you were born and raised. We want you to stay here. But I understand. I understand. You want to go to places that are better, have more services, it's more community minded, so, but I did encourage her to stay here. Stay here. So the meetings that are coming up, again, First Ward is going to be one of them for sure, you think, but we just don't have the dates in them.
Correct. Yeah, I need to wait to hear from Michelle on those dates before we go ahead. But I'm hoping sometime either Friday, Saturday, Sunday, obviously in the evening, so we can get people coming out. So if you're looking at some time this weekend, that's what we're thinking of.
Can you give us the name of any of the other groups that would like to host a meeting?
I cannot. I actually think I did have a representative from at least one neighborhood association say that they wanted to do it. But like I said, we had 19 people. I think most of those were actually individuals who were interested in helping out and weren't sure how to put one on together. So we probably are going to have a training for some of these individuals who want to host their own, because you can, if you just want to go door knocking around your block and have them collect some of the surveys, that'd be phenomenal. And again, the surveys aren't just like check a box. We have some check boxes, but we also want people to use the big open box that we have in the survey for people to tell their story, describe what they want in long form, so that we're not, cutting anybody off or fitting somebody into a box where they might not agree with exactly the ideas of what we're thinking of in a category. We're not trying to categorize things. We want people to hear from people specifically what they need.
Can they take that survey online?
Yes, they can. And I'm going to make sure First Ward has it posted. I don't think that the link is up there right now. It's like in a QR code format right now. Right. And I believe you can find that online because they have some posters floating around, but I will make sure that the link itself is posted.
Okay. If you just tuned in, you're listening to Community Connections, Community Talk for Community People. I'm Joyce Harvin, and my guest today for the third week is
third week in a row.
Third week in a row. We have $52 million coming into the city. We want you to know that you can be a part of the process. We want you to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. And we want your input. We want you to assist the city government in making plans for this $52 million as it hits the city. Okay. The water shutoffs, it's very important. I don't know how many residents, individual, resident homes need their water pipes, all of that redone. Okay. But I don't know if any of that can be used for, any of the funds can be used for that. But those water shutoffs are coming in June. And
yeah, the date that I've heard is June 15th. And to be very honest, I will be blunt about this because I've seen this play out before. I've been involved in Detroit. I've been involved in Flint when it comes to water shutoffs. It's never pretty. It's never a good idea, especially in the middle of the summer. We're dealing with 90-degree heat right now to go out and shut off people's water. Because you know what they have to do? They have to pay the contractors. And it's a hefty bill to go pay contractors to go shut off people's water. And when you shut off people's waters in their home, especially for a while, technically, due to EPA standards, when that water comes back on, they're supposed to replace almost every single appliance in their home because the water sits there, it collects bacteria, it's not safe. And yes, and there's a lot of if you are shutting off water in the summer, that is creating a public health crisis. And also, if you have a community like Saginaw, here's a tidbit for you. We get, whenever you hear about a boil water advisory, what that usually means is a water main broke, pipes burst, and there could be contamination, but the contamination isn't the biggest story. What can happen is you have slow moving water. And it's a really big problem in places like Flint and Saginaw, where we used to have much larger populations. So our water infrastructure is meant to support a much larger population. So there's a lot of dead spaces where water is just sort of sitting there.
Okay.
What happens when you shut off more people from that water is the water gets even slower. The water flow goes down and the pressure goes down. And what happens when that pressure goes down, or when that flow is down, and when that water isn't going to homes, you get slower water, and you create more of a risk of bacteria. And that is a reason why in Flint, they ask people all the time to flush their water, flush your water, flush for 20 minutes. We're doing work around here, but also it's good practice to flush your toilets,
Right.
and
run your water for
run your water for 20 minutes.
And then you have to pay for that.
And then you have to pay for it. So it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
And also, I don't understand why the city, it's not economically feasible. You're not going to get that money back. That water, and of course your unpaid water bill, it's not just that they shut off your water, that goes on a lien on your house, and they can foreclose. It only takes 2 years. And if you have outstanding bills, for your house to be foreclosed on. And actually, that was a tactic used in Detroit to kick out 10,000 of the city's poorest residents. They hiked up the water bills. Then they put them over. They did water shutoffs, and they did liens, and then they foreclosed on thousands of properties in just under a year.
Ooh,
it was very, very sad.
Terrible.
And that's not what we should be doing in Saginaw. We should not be shutting off water. We know we have direct relief payments coming. Just 3 days ago, President Biden announced a $1.1 billion direct water bill relief plan. This is coming. This money, it's going to be allocated to the state. We need that in Saginaw. We're going to get it in Saginaw. The water is the money is coming for the water. There is no reason for the city to conduct these shutoffs. It's not smart. It's not economic. It won't motivate people to pay their water bills, because if you don't have $900, you don't have $900. I do know that there is supposedly direct assistance available to people who apply for it. So I will encourage people to call 211 and get in touch with United Way to try to fill out the applications. I know those application processes are long. And I would again encourage.
We'll make it by the 9th?
By the what?
By the 9th?
Well, the 15th is the water shutoff date that I'm hearing.
Okay.
And the answer is I don't know. I do not know. I do not know how those applications are handled and what the process is there. But I would greatly encourage any city council members or any city administrators, or really anybody who's listening, because you can go to the city council meeting coming up on Monday, and you can talk about it and say how you feel about shutting off 750 customers in the city of Saginaw, which is 750 households, which is 750 families, from water during the summer. And tell them how you feel about that.
Yeah, that's good. We only have a couple of minutes left here on Community Connections. I want you to know that my guest has been Carly Rose Hammond, and we're talking about the ARPA funds of $52 million coming right here to the city of Saginaw. And we are letting you know this information because we want you to give some input on how you would like that money spent for your neighborhood revitalization. Be a part of the process. Help the city determine how that money should be spent for the good of the city. Okay. Help improve it. Make it look better. It says, we build Saginaw, we build community. Be a part of the process. We want you to do that right there in your neighborhood. Though that highway 675 that has split up northeast Saginaw from the other side, from the southeast Saginaw, that whole area over there needs to be revitalized.